Hey guys, welcome back. So, a few days ago, it was actually my 21st birthday. And that's actually why I haven't made a video in a couple days, because I've been going over some of the stuff that I got. And also is the same reason why I will be having a glass of bourbon with this video. But the video today is going to be on Planet of the Apes. This is going to be accompanied by the 1974 Mego Planet of the Apes figures. The Zeus figure, of which I got from my brother for my 21st birthday. Something that's really cool about these Mego figures, too, is that they have many points of articulation, many more than the original Kenner Star Wars figures, which makes sense because they're an 8-inch figure rather than a 3 3/4. But these figures are really cool. They have a lot of points of articulation, and they have like a real clothing on that's made of like a cloth and synthetic material, it looks like here. And I think that's really cool, you know. Especially Zeus's outfit, because he's got the boots and all that, you know. And his cuffs are like fur, like how an ape's clothing would look. The boots are definitely my favorite part. There's even a design on the boots that is seen on their coats and on their boots and stuff like that. It's very, very close to the movie, because toys back then were never, like, exactly like the movie. That's just not how it was. You know what I mean? Especially, like, look at, like, the blue snag, you know? Like, this is, like, what... By the way, I got a red snag, finally. This is what he was, like, kind of, like, supposed to look like, but the toy originally looked like that. So, you know, toys just didn't really look exactly like they were supposed to, and that was okay, you know, it was fine. I mean, R2, the Kenner R2 looks nothing like R2 at all. Like, what is going on there on his, like, face, you know? I mean, really? I've always wondered that. When I was a little kid, I was always like, wow, they didn't even try, did they, to make it look like R2, you know, like, wow. But, yeah, so toys, I mean, they never looked, you know, exact, but this looks like what they would wear. That's all you need with toys that are of this age. They just need to look like something that they would wear. Not exactly what they wore, because it's just unrealistic standards of the time, because toys just weren't... People didn't put that kind of accuracy into toys because toy collectors didn't exist in 1974. G.I. Joe collectors barely existed, maybe, because G.I. Joe had only been out for 10 years, and I guess that's when people usually start collecting a franchise, but that's like now, or in the 80s. Not like in the 60s. I don't know if people collected G.I. Joe or Action Man in the 70s, but they may have. So first we'll talk about the original Planet of the Apes. Now, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. This movie is thought-provoking in many different ways, scientifically, religiously, and philosophically. The movie is an all-around thought-provoking work of art. It starts off with 4 astronauts being sent in the new spacecraft Icarus, which has relativistic speed capabilities, or near light speed travel. Therefore, allowing spacecraft Icarus and its 4-man crew to dilate time in a way that slows time down for them in motion, but time will stay at the same rate for those at rest, or those back on Earth, which will then, from their perspective, relativistically accelerate time for those at rest, therefore making them end up in the very far future. And this becomes important as George Taylor looks at the ship's clock right as they are evacuating the ship, because it had crash landed and began to sink. After the crash landing, they also discover that their one woman crew member had actually died in cryogenic sleep, because although they were traveling at relativistic speeds, they were still spending a decent amount of time on the spacecraft, therefore increasing the food and oxygen and water efficiency usage while they are in hypersleep. But what happened is her cryogenic hypersleep chamber thing had a crack in it, and so the gases, I suppose, that are used for the cryogenic sleep, I believe that's why the gases escaped, because in a Twilight Zone episode, the reason why I think this is because in a Twilight Zone episode where 3 criminals steal a bunch of gold, they use these cryogenic chambers that look exactly like the ones in Planet of the Apes. And there's a gas that puts them into hypersleep. And I know they inject stuff into them, but I think the gas is involved too, because Rod Serling wrote a lot of the Planet of the Apes screenplay, And so we will actually get into that a little bit later into the spoiler zone. So as they leave, they don't have enough time to look at the tapes of their trajectory of where they had landed. But they look around and it's very rocky. They're paddling in their lifeboat. And all of a sudden they see these X's on the top of the hill. And they look like scarecrows, right? And so they go up there and they find water. So they go for a swim, and then these people take all their stuff. And so this is where they discover the humans, and they also discover that the humans are a very primitive form of humans that are also mute. And so then, all of a sudden, the humans just take off, you know, because they hear, like, these noises. And you see these sticks hitting, like, corn, you know, like chopping down corn, basically. And basically, this is where the reveal of the apes comes into play. And it's kind of interesting that they really build up the reveal, you know, because the movie is called Planet of the Apes, so everybody knows what's going to happen in that case, you know, for that situation. But don't worry, the twist at the end is much better. The whole crew was captured in one way or another. One guy was killed and stuffed. One guy was captured and lobotomized, and our main character, George Taylor, well, he was captured, but he was able to live normally without his brain being tampered with. But the only problem was that he was shot in the neck during the chase, and so he wasn't able to talk. But he was able to do sign language and write stuff down, which gets the attention of the animal psychologist working there. Animal psychologist referring to humans named Zira. Now, Zira is an awesome character because she is the representation of science being the one universal thing that will eventually lead to compassion, because science is understanding, and understanding will then lead to the compassion of these intelligent beings. She's also engaged, I believe at the time, eventually married to Cornelius. Now, he is an archaeologist, and he had recently been working on a certain dig in what is known as the Forbidden Zone, which they touch upon later in the second movie, Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Now, this is where the spoilers come into play, alright? So if you haven't seen Planet of the Apes, you should stop watching right now, and if you have the time to do so, you should watch Planet of the Apes, for sure. It's an awesome movie. I mean, probably one of the best movies of all time. And so, now that we've gotten that out of the way, we can start getting into the really interesting stuff, because unfortunately, the spoilers are also the most interesting stuff. So, being an archaeologist, Cornelius discovers evidence of a past civilization that was even more advanced than the current ape civilization. And there's also evidence that points to it being a human-run civilization. This being the doll that is found at the end of the movie that is shown to Dr. Zaius, but he still tries to deny that man was ever there before them because he knows everything. And that's what's so important to know about Dr. Zaius, is that he knows everything about man. He knows that man was there before them, he knows that man was more advanced, and he knows that man eventually destroyed part of the world. So, something that's very important of note about Dr. Zaius is that he is not only the minister of science, but also the leader of the faith, which, as a lot of people probably know, science and faith don't always mix well. And so, that is why Dr. Zaius, being both the minister of science and the leader of the faith, becomes a problem in the film. And you see this play out throughout some scenes in the film. Dr. Zaius wasn't being stupid. He was just trying to cover up the truth the whole time. And this is what you will actually pick up on during your second viewing of the movie. And that's what another thing that makes Planet of the Apes so great, is that there's little treats later on during your second viewing. Because throughout the movie, as George Taylor is showing signs of intelligence via communication of writing or signing things, Zaius erases the writing that he makes in the sand, or when he folds a paper airplane and throws it across the ground, Zaius crumples it up, because he's trying to cover up the truth the whole time. So eventually, Zira and Cornelius help Taylor and his now human counterpart girlfriend, mute girl person, Nova, to escape and get out into the Forbidden Zone, basically, so that they can be where apes are not. And so Cornelius and Zira take them away and break them out. They go to the archaeology ruins where Cornelius was digging. And this is where that key scene I was referring to just a second ago with finding the doll and Zeus denying that it's still a creation of man. This is where that all takes place, in these archaeology diggings and during this scene. And basically what happens is Zeus gets captured by Taylor, gets tied up, and Taylor asks for Zeus to call off his men, and then Zeus explains to Taylor why man is so evil and why man is the harbinger of death, as it says in the Sacred Scrolls. Now, the Sacred Scrolls are important, and they become very important later on, because the Sacred Scrolls are what the lawgiver ape, or the ape that organized their civilization. This lawgiver came up with these Sacred Scrolls, which basically are like the 10 Commandments, and they tell apes how to live, ape shall not kill ape, and so on. And they start reading passages to Taylor about these Sacred Scrolls. They start reading passages from the Sacred Scrolls that are referring to man. You know, it says, he will kill his brother for his land. After finding all of this evidence of an ancient human civilization, Taylor says, I see the how and the when, but I can't find out the why, meaning why did they disappear? And Zeus replies with, don't look for it, Taylor. You may not like what you find. And this sets up the big reveal at the end of the movie. Now, this is ultimate spoiler alert. If you have not seen the movie, I will once again tell you to watch the movie. Because what I'm about to tell you is the greatest movie twist of all time. Alright, you ready? You better have watched the movie if you're watching this right now. Okay. So, Taylor rides along the shore of the planet of the apes, kind of continent or society or whatever. And he comes across the Statue of Liberty, telling us that the planet of the apes was not just a planet of apes, but it was once the planet of Earth. And the movie ends with Charlton Heston, George Taylor, proclaiming, you maniacs, you blew it all up. Damn you all to hell. I think it's the greatest movie ending of all time. Because of the emotion and the twist, everything involved makes it the greatest movie ending of all time.